Hello, I'm Lazarus. I'm 19 years old. I did not grow up in the churches at all, only going a few times as a child, even though my mother was supposedly a Catholic and my father a Lutheran. The only education I had of God, Jesus, and the Bible was from going to vacation Bible school with my neighbors. The times I did finally get to church, I was taken away to the children's church just before the pastor began his sermon. That left me with a bad taste in my mouth toward the churches and toward Christianity as a whole, as I never knew it to be anything but about a secret book that only adults were allowed to read or listen to. From there, I was an atheist throughout middle school and an agnostic in high school. In a search for more knowledge, I got around to doing some research into events recorded in the Bible, like the Tower of Babel and the flood. I found that many ancient civilizations had a myth of a great flood that hit the whole world. That, paired with the similar architecture, symbols, and gods of Native American and Egyptian cultures, led me to see the truth of what had been recorded in Genesis, and led me to actual belief in God. Of course, at first, I said the little prayer, confessing my sins to Jesus and asking Him to be my Lord, because that was all I knew. But after reading the Gospels for the first time, I knew that Jesus was the man that God wanted us to mirror in our lives, in every word and deed. Finally picking a church near me, I started going for a few months, because that was what I thought being a Christian was all about. But I felt terribly underwhelmed every time I went, especially after the sermon I sat through on the Super Bowl. I knew God gave us all a measure of faith, and I wanted to do something with mine, but I had no idea what. That is, until I watched the number 5 video on the Voice in the Desert channel on YouTube, which covers Jesus instructing anyone to forsake all they have if they truly want to follow God. That includes your wealth, job, home, family, wife and kids, and even your life. That was the kind of action I wanted to do for God. So I became inspired and enthused about forsaking all. I sold my possessions and gave to the poor and quit my job. I left my family behind to seek after God's promise of provision, like Abraham did. Now, after ceasing to work for money to buy my food and clothing, I've been provided for sevenfold what I used to be eating and wearing. Even this shirt, hat, and these sunglasses I'm wearing now were provided by our Father. Not to mention all the diverse types of foods that I never would have bothered eating in my old life. They are now regular parts of whatever meals our Father provides as my daily bread. I've also stepped out in faith to live communally with other believers in Christ. We have given up private ownership to share all things in common with one another, like the early disciples did in Acts. We also spread this good news of the kingdom of heaven out on the streets. We head out each day and night, distributing literature and DVDs and talking to people one-on-one about who or what their faith is really in. This is how we fulfill the Great Commission, preaching the real gospel, the good news of not needing to toil by the sweat of your brow for your food and clothing under God's curse to sinful men, and instead working for God to spread true love and becoming a son or daughter of God. Besides distributing, we also do odd jobs, like maintaining any vehicles our Father provides for us, doing dishes, sweeping the floor, cooking, doing laundry, and keeping budgets, and other rather tedious things in comparison to the preaching of the gospel. But, and this is a big but, all these things are for our spiritual edification. Jesus did say to be faithful with the little things, so that God can reward us later with responsibility over many things in the kingdom to come. Jesus also said that the greatest of all shall be the least among us, and taking care of things that you know your brother can do just as well is a good step in the direction of self-denial and taking up your cross daily. In fact, bearing my brother's burdens is part and parcel of living in a Christian community. But don't be dismayed. We all bear one another's burdens. There are no slackers among us, as we are all held accountable for our actions that are visible by our brothers, and we are held accountable by God for our actions that aren't visible to any man. But don't get me wrong, living with other believers is some of the best fellowship and worship I've ever experienced. It can't even be compared to the hour of karaoke and 2-minute prayer spoken by one guy on the pulpit that the churches peddle as worship. In fact, when we all pray in agreement over something, I can actually feel it being heard by God, and it feels wonderful. It really encourages you and solidifies your faith even more once you experience life in Christian community. I hope all of you watching and listening will see that it is possible to obey Jesus' hardest and most challenging commands today, and will eventually come join me in working for God and dismantling the system of greed that the world clings to. Our Father will never lead us into temptation, but will deliver us from evil. Therefore, don't worry about the what-ifs. God will take care of you. Also, honestly ask yourself if you're prepared to follow Jesus to the death. Almost all the 12 disciples were killed for their action toward what Jesus calls all men to do. Though the time for us to die may be far away, it comes quicker than you expect. If we are all living together and bolstering one another's faith, however, we will definitely endure to the end. But I can't do it without you. God bless you, and amen.